Common Ground, a Prairie Podcast, is supported by a generous grant from the North Dakota Natural Resources Trust. If you would like to contribute to our on-the-ground conservation initiatives and our conservation internship and mentorship programs here in North Dakota, please consider making a donation to us through our member support link on our Spotify page. Your contributions will directly support the Walsh County Three Rivers Soil Conservation District, where this year we will plant over 10,000 trees and several hundred acres of conservation grass, pollinators, and cover crops, while also offering hands-on conservation job training to our high school and college interns. You can also support our efforts by liking, reviewing, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Thank you. Welcome to Common Ground, a Prairie Podcast. This is your host, Josh Anderson. Today's episode is dedicated to the next generation of American farmers and ranchers, as we ask, what does it take to become a beginner farmer? This question is a central theme of today's episode, where we talk with two young North Dakota farmers, Jake Callander and Luke Rotunda, who have taken different routes into their exciting early years as farmers and ranchers. With land prices, equipment costs, and input demands soaring, and the average acreage of the farm growing year after year, it is tougher for young people today than ever before to get their start in the soil. In North Dakota today, the average farmer is nearly 58 years old. When this statistic was first reported in the 1945 census, the average age of an American farmer was a full decade younger, at 48 years old. In the 1940s, nearly 1/5 of the U.S. population listed direct on-the-farm work as their occupation. Today, that number hovers just above 1%. The simple fact is, we desperately need more young farmers and ranchers. In today's episode, we talk with two young men who have taken on the challenge. Jake Callander of Nature's Roots FARRMS and a farmer educator for the Foundations for Agricultural and Rural Resources Management Sustainability, also known as the FARRMS program with 2 R's. Jake shares his insights about how he was inspired by his childhood on a 3,000-acre conventional farm, but took a different path, focused on growing diverse and delicious local food on a smaller scale. Luke Rotunda is a self-described city kid who found his way into farming and ranching with the help of his uncle. We caught up with Luke on a windy day to talk about how his partnership with Ducks Unlimited has helped him to achieve his soil health goals through an intricate cover crop and livestock grazing operation. Together, Jake and Luke represent the future of American farming here in the Northern Great Plains. Both are committed to the principles of soil health, and both have an abundance of infectious enthusiasm for farming. Listen to the episode to learn how Jake grew up with horror stories about pesticides told by his uncle and grandfather, and how these stories inspired him to try to find an organic pathway into growing food. And keep listening to learn how flavor is Jake's #1 marketing strategy today at Nature's Roots FARRMS. Then, in our second interview, stay tuned for farmer-rancher Luke Rotunda, who joined us at his ranch to talk about the ways he has partnered with Ducks Unlimited to develop working lands approaches to grasslands management and grazing cover crops on cropland. The episode also features our first repeat guest, Robert Ford of Ducks Unlimited, who joined us at Luke's ranch to share his insights about how what's good for the birds is also good for the herd. Without further ado, let's start the show. Welcome to Common Ground, a Prairie Podcast. We are delighted today to be with Jake Callander, the farmer educator for the FARRMS program, and that's with 2 R's. I'll let you explain what that is in just a minute. We are out here today in Lestico Park, which is in Grafton. We just completed our annual Arbor Walk. It's our second annual Arbor Walk, and you guys came from all over really to join us today and give some information about first-time farming and other information about your programs that you offer. Can you tell us a little bit about your own background and how you got involved with FARRMS?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll start with the beginning. So I was at NDSU going to school for basically ag business, and then I was just scrolling through Instagram one day and I actually found the FARRMS Instagram account. So I started searching through their website and found their Farm Beginnings program, and I thought it looked like a lot of fun. So I signed up for that, and then I went through their, it has now changed, but it was originally called the Sustainable Ag Internship. Now it's the Local Food Systems Internship. So I graduated college on a Saturday, and then I started working in my internship on Monday with Uncle Jesse's Produce. And so I spent the summer out with him. I just wanted to experience more about this local foods movement, got really excited, got really passionate, started my own little 1/3 of an acre plot, and it just snowballed from there. Went into the Farm Dreams program that fall, took the Farm Beginnings class that winter, kind of built my business plan, and then hit the ground running, just farming.
Awesome. Well, and so when we had a chance to talk earlier, you said that you grew up on about a 3,000 acre kind of conventional farm, and then you are doing yourself a pretty multifaceted, multi-species, smaller scale, smaller acreage farm. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience in the conventional farming world, and then how you got into the more CSA model farming?
Yeah. Truly, the conventional style of farming was always fun. Big fancy tractors, getting to drive these things around. You're driving around $500,000 combine. It's fun. It's intimidating. Feels like giant toys. But my grandfather and my uncle took me to a class to get certified to spray your crops, and it was the safety class. So they went through all of the terrifying scenarios that spraying in chemicals can cause on you, the cancer on the spray drift from the fields and things like that. Chemicals in your boots, and you take your boots off and the skin just falls off. Just horror stories, you know? Yeah. And I was 9. It was my golden birthday, so I was 9 years old in this class, and ever since then it always freaked me out. And for a few years there, about a decade, I was just trying to figure out, I knew I always wanted to be a farmer, be in agriculture. I just didn't know what aspect it was going to be. Got to college, started learning about market gardening, started learning from Jean-Martin Fortier, Curtis Stone, all these different successful market gardeners throughout the country and throughout the world. And I was like, well, if they can do it, I was like, why can't I? So I just started on a small scale, 1/3 of an acre little plot just behind the grandma's house, turned her garden into kind of a market garden style, and it worked out. It went really well. We were pulling out a lot of crops, more crops than we could eat ourselves between the entire family and can for during the winter time. And then I thought, well, now we need to go to markets and start that way. And it was just a passion. I just loved doing it, loved growing food instead of fuel. Okay. And when I look out into a lot of these fields, especially in the valley, it's a lot of corn, it's a lot of soy. The potatoes are gone, unfortunately. You don't see it very often. So when you're driving around these fields, you don't really get to see food that you're eating on your plate. And I was like, well, I can do that. So let's try it out.
Yeah, I love that. one of the things that I'm curious about, you've mentioned, your role as being a student and kind of even going back to being 9 years old and being in these pesticide kind of warning classes, to your role today as a farm educator, right? Kind of flipping the script and being on the education side of things. Can you tell us a little bit about what that transition has been like for you, of going from the student to now being the teacher? I've been a teacher before myself, and I know that I'm still very much a student, even when I'm a teacher, but I'd like to hear how that's gone for you. And then also, like, what kinds of training and education are you offering to first-time small acreage farmers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it right, the nail on the head there. Like, we're always students. Whether we're a facilitator or teachers, we're in those higher levels. Farming is one of those subjects that it's an immense topic that you can learn for a lifetime and still not know everything. So we're always students, we're always learning. As for becoming kind of the teacher role and the facilitator role, I've always kind of had a desire to teach, to be able to give my knowledge out, to be able to share this information. There's times where I like to go down the rabbit hole on composting and figure out everything there is about vermicomposting, and then I would like to be able to share that information with more people. Like, some of this stuff is hard to find, especially in this topic where not a lot of people are doing it, and especially in the Red River Valley, there's not a lot of us out here. So trying to find this information can be difficult, and I've always wanted to be able to push it back out to the community, so everybody can do it.
So access to information seems like that might be one of the challenges. What are some of the other challenges either you personally have encountered as a first-time farmer, even though you grew up in agriculture, kind of taking it out on your own and taking it in a different direction? And can you speak kind of broadly to some of the challenges you see other first-time farmers or small acreage farmers or market garden farmers face as they try to make a go of it here in the Red River Valley?
Yeah, absolutely. The big thing that I have heard from my students and from other students around the country, part of the Farm Beginnings Collaborative program, is land access, and that's definitely the toughest part. I am very grateful that my family had conventional land, and they had a little plot of land that they didn't want to work anymore, so I'm very grateful. I have a great opportunity for that, but a lot of people don't have that access, especially if you're living in the big cities like Grand Forks, Fargo, Bismarck, Minot. If you're landlocked by your neighbors, there's not much you can do. The nice thing is you, with that land access piece, if you want to start farming, you can start farming in your backyard. You can farm in an apartment. I currently still live in an apartment, and I start every single set plant for my market garden, which is about 2 acres, inside that 2-bedroom apartment. So it can be done. Wow. It's just whether or not you want to do that and take that mess, that watering, the lights, all the thing. But it just takes those steps.
Sure.
So land access is definitely difficult, but the nice thing about vegetables and market gardening is you can really do it in a small space. You don't have to have the 1,000 acres like the conventional farmers do.
Sure, that's fascinating to imagine the work all starting in a 2-bedroom apartment for a farm.
It's definitely wild.
Yeah, that is pretty wild. So can you describe for us what someone who might be interested in the Farm Beginnings program, what are some of the things they're going to encounter or learn in that program, and what are you guys going to be able to help them to do through that program?
Absolutely. So the Farm Beginnings program is our base program. It's our most foundational program that we have at FARRMS. It's a business planning course, more specifically a holistic business planning course. So throughout the 3 months, we typically run it through January through March, because that's typically when farmers, it's our slow season, we're not doing much. So we'll take those winter months. Every week we have a class. Each class is on a specific topic. So we'll go through business structures, we'll go through soil health, food safety, financial planning, holistic financial planning, accounting, all these different topics to help build you a business plan. So at the end of the course, you should have a completed holistic business plan, or at least a very good structure to it, that you can be able to go to banks, different loaning officers, different grant opportunities, and be able to present that plan to these people to actually get funding for your farm and for your dream.
One of the things that really stood out to me when I started doing a little research on the FARRMS program is that it's not only training for individual farmers to be successful on whatever kind of operation they're trying to develop, but there's a real emphasis on community development and rural community development in particular. Can you tell us a little bit about how you maybe personally see that, and how your work with FARRMS has helped you to see the relationship between farming and community building?
Yeah. The big thing that I see within my programs that we specifically do is we have mentorships. So in the Farm Beginnings course, you are paired with an experienced farmer that's been doing this for a while, has a very strong business plan, and can help you answer those questions. And then same thing with our summer mentorship program that's going on right now. We are pairing beginning farmers with experienced farmers within their local region. So you can develop that peer support network that you can go and ask questions to. Like, farming is a very difficult industry. It's hard to do. There's a lot of questions, and sometimes it makes you, like, it's an isolating job. So you think that this is only happening to you, where building this community and building this peer support allows you to realize, like, I'm not the only one in this boat. Everybody this year is having problems with weeds because of the rain, or everybody's having problems with potato beetles because they're just massive this year. So it makes you feel not so isolated.
You know, one of the things that I like to hear about this mentorship program, it's something that we're trying to develop through our office in soil conservation as well, where we have a number of different mentorship kind of programs, working with young people, getting them out to events like this, but also getting their hands dirty, literally, with planting grass, planting trees. And that often brings me back to how important it is. The masthead for FARRMS is that it promotes thriving, sustainable North Dakota communities. And speaking from our own experience, having the right people on your team, or growing them into the right people through mentorship and education and opportunity is really crucial. Today, you guys showed up from all over the place. So can you tell me a little bit about how that kind of collaboration works through FARRMS, and what it's like to work on a team that's so spread out across the state?
Yeah, it's definitely a unique perspective, especially in my previous jobs, or any previous jobs. I've never had an online position before, so it's kind of fun. It's very interesting to do. FARRMS is based in North Dakota, and we serve North Dakota, and including the surrounding states from time to time. And we're a little bit everywhere. We're in the middle of the state, we're out west, we're in the valley here. And the nice thing with our team is we all have our specialties. Like, we have a marketing manager that does a phenomenal job at all of our social medias and keeping up with that. Stephanie, who is our executive director, she keeps the lights on, she keeps the ship moving in the right direction. You have Jenna, who has running the internship program this summer, and she is very involved with the local food systems, farmers markets, very interested and passionate about that subject. That's the nice thing about our team, is that we all have these specialties that we can bring together, even though we're spread out all across the state, and make a very functional program and make a very functional goals and all the good things. Like, it comes together very, very well.
And so in your role, it seems like in some cases you're also a kind of advocate, but through education, right? Mm-hmm. And so what has it been like, maybe within your own family, but in the broader kind of scheme of the Red River Valley, with large-scale production agriculture sort of dominating the region, what has it been like for you to be advocating for CSAs, market gardens, that kind of farming?
It depends on who you're talking to. Sure. That is for sure. It's very fun. The the big towns like Fargo and Grand Forks, you get a lot of welcoming perspectives. They get very, very excited. I mean, you still get that one oddball every once in a while. It's just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? But for the most part, it's a very welcoming feel, and that carries over into the small towns too. That's the nice part, is that there is a warm, welcoming presence, and there is a demand. But there's also people that are wondering why you're doing this, and like, why aren't you using tractors? Why aren't you using chemicals? It makes life so much easier. And that's, in my opinion, that's just a lack of information.
Yeah.
That's all it is. If you want to learn a little bit more about the soil health principles and different things like that, you can start to understand where these chemicals, deep tillage, tilling your gardens, how it's so damaging to the soil, and how you're actually going back. You're taking steps backward in soil health. Whereas with market gardening, you can kind of have the ability to go the step beyond. We have the ability to put compost out. We have the ability to use hand tools. We can walk around instead of using tractors that compact the soil. You have a little bit more flexibility. Now, there is a way to do sustainable large-scale farming too. The organic space is a great example. It is possible, but it's just not the norm yet.
Sure.
And hopefully you can start to see the transition even today, but it's a slow process, and we'll get there. And as long as we can put food on the table for everybody, I mean, that's what really matters.
Yeah. And, so we've been learning a lot ourselves here in the office about some of the principles of soil health, things like minimal disturbance, including both tillage and mechanical and chemical disturbance. Mm-hmm. So minimizing tillage, minimizing the use of pesticides and herbicides, fungicides. Thinking about living roots as long as possible, preferably forever, throughout the growing season and into winter. Just thinking about mimicking the tall grass prairie and the mixed grass prairie that we have here that really grew the soils. Diversity of species, right? And then to some degree, there's also the opportunity for things like livestock integration. And if you don't have access to livestock, maybe a neighbor does. Or even just thinking about how is your garden, your farm plot, how is it being maybe pollinated by wildlife, that kind of thing. Working with the land as opposed to sort of in an antagonistic position with it. And with that with that framework in mind, I guess I'm curious. What are the selling points that seem to really matter to consumers when we are talking about why go to a CSA model, or why open that up as a possibility? What are some of the ways that we can really sell that?
There's many different ways, and there's many different angles that you can take from it. The one that I always use at the market is taste it. Like, if you try my strawberry compared to what you can buy at the grocery store, you'll never eat a strawberry in the grocery store again. That applies for all fruits and all vegetables. I'm not a big fan of radishes, and radish season is right now. It's coming in really nice. And I threw it on my salad. I was just like, well, let's see. Maybe it's okay. It was the best salad I've ever had in my life. It was so delicious. I'm not a fan of radishes at all, but it was phenomenal. Like, it's this fresh produce that's coming straight from the field. Like, when you're getting products from the grocery store, typically, depending on what time of year it is, but typically it's going to go from a farm into a truck, into a warehouse, back into a truck, gets put into another warehouse, then it gets put into a grocery store, and then it sits in the grocery store for a few weeks, and then it gets put on the shelf, and then you buy it. By the time it's from the farm to your house and in your fridge, it's been anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months. Yeah. Like, it takes a very long time to get these products in the store, whereas local farms, most of my products are harvested within 48 hours, and it's put in my customers' fridges. Mm-hmm. So it's as fresh as you possibly can get it, and that's the selling point for me. Like, there's absolutely more benefits to local agriculture than just flavor, but I think that's the selling point that we need to hit on.
Yeah, that is, to me, such an important point. The sensual pleasure of flavor.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an undersold portion of what we're up to here when we're thinking about soil health. And, we can get into the literal and figurative weeds when we're talking about soil health. But if we come back to thinking about like flavor, nutrient density, that's another selling point, but
Absolutely.
really just the burst of flavor that we can grow in these ways. Alice Waters, who's a quite famous American chef who's got a restaurant in California, she says that that's really what gives her hope for the future of agriculture is flavor, that people will, when given the opportunity, will always choose something that's fresh, something that's local, something that tastes good. Yeah. And so, I think that's a brilliant point here. So, I guess finally, I wanted to just ask, where can we find out more about FARRMS and how can people get involved? Like, can we get a little plug here for how people can be involved in FARRMS?
Absolutely. The best way, and the way that I started, just to get your feet wet, is go to our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, just FARRMS with 2 R's, FARRMS. That's the best way to find us. Our website is a brand new website, just launched about a week ago. We have a farmer directory on there. We have resources, multiple information about the different programs that we offer, the different programs that I run, like Farm Dreams, Farm Beginnings, the Summer Mentorship, and then we also hold webinars and workshops online throughout the year. Typically more heavy in the wintertime just because we have more time, and I have more time because I'm always out in the field. But yeah, that is the best place to do it, and most of our webinars and workshops are free. Most of our programs are free. The only program that we charge for is our Farm Beginnings course, and that's just kind of paying for the textbook, and that's basically what we need it for. But other than that, all of our information is on our website. I highly recommend signing up for our newsletter. That gives you all of the information that we go through, and then Facebook is a great way to kind of stay up on those events that we're doing.
And how can we check out your farm and taste those strawberries?
Yes, absolutely. The strawberries are still a little young.
Yeah.
Most of our perennial fruits have been put in over the last 2 years, so we're still waiting on some. But my farm is Nature's Roots Farms in Hillsboro, North Dakota. We have a Facebook, Instagram. We're on the FARRMS Farmer Directory, so you can find us on there. And then we go to the Red River Farmers Market in Fargo, in downtown Fargo, and then we also work with the Red River Harvest Co-op in Moorhead. So you can find our products there, and you can find our microgreens year-round there as well.
Well, thank you so much, Jake, for taking the time to talk with us. We're
Absolutely.
really excited to be building a partnership relationship with FARRMS here in Walsh County, and we look forward to more. Thank you very much.
I'm excited as well. Thank you, Josh.
Take it. Next up, we join Luke Rotunda at his ranch in Nelson County, North Dakota, on one of the windiest days in what is perhaps the windiest state in the country. So welcome to Common Ground, a Prairie Podcast.
Yep.
We're delighted to be out here with Luke Rotunda, out at his farm here in Nelson County. And I guess I wanted to start off by just asking if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your operation here.
Yeah, as you said, my name's Luke Rotunda, and I farm here by Tulna with my uncle, and I got some cattle out here, and we run cattle and sheep and a lot of grain farming, but right out here we got cover crop going, and graze cover crops and everything like that.
Great. What kind of cattle you got?
We got Angus cattle.
Black Angus,
Yep.
yeah, cool.
Yep.
So it seems like it's a pretty diverse operation, and you said it's also multi-generational,
Yes.
you and your uncle.
Yep.
And, yeah, cool, very cool.
Yeah, I'd be 5th generation out here. My uncle's number 4. So,
And so, as you know, we kind of got put in touch through Robert Ford of Ducks Unlimited, and it sounds like you guys have been doing some projects together. What motivated you to partner with Ducks Unlimited?
Well, we're mostly a grain farm here, and then we were adding the cattle here. I've been added the cattle, and so we needed fences. We were starting from scratch basically, and we found out about Ducks Unlimited and their cost share programs, and thought they'd be pretty good to work with, and they've been excellent to work with out here.
And you know, that's something I wanted to kind of dig into a little more, the adding of the cattle. A lot of people have been getting out of cattle, as you know, in North Dakota. And you know, the Meadowlark Initiative, they say that we're losing about 1% of our cattle operations in the state every year. So it's really important, I think, to be bringing those back. And can you tell us a little bit about like what motivated you to bring cattle back?
Well, I think I'm reading and studying. mean, a lot about how these cover crops and grazing can really build soil health and diversifying an operation, you know, and having more going on than just grain farming. You know, you got other work throughout the year, and building soil health and everything like that. It's just, you know.
As I've been driving around, as you can see, my pickup's very dirty. I've been driving all over the state and kind of doing some of these interviews, and I've been listening a lot to Gabe Brown's book, From Dirt to Soil, and he talks a lot about the importance of bringing livestock back onto the ground. About how long have you had your livestock, and do you put them on your crop ground?
We do, yeah. Like this is a cover crop field here, so this is sometimes crop ground. We do graze cover crops in the fall a lot. And we started about 5 years ago, and I've been slowly growing. I don't know anything about livestock. I'm a city kid originally, actually from Fargo, but started learning about livestock, and now we got a bigger size herd out here.
Okay. Well, so that brings up another question. So what is a city kid? What's that acclimation like? Being out here in the boonies?
It's a lot different. It was a big change. I mean, I started helping my uncle in high school and everything, and found out I really loved it out here. And so now started farming with Brian, and it's worked out really well.
You know, when we talk about soil health practices and new farmers, new and young farmers, sometimes that's like the exact right group to get because they haven't kind of had that long-term generational way of doing things, and so maybe openness to more new ideas. But has your uncle been at it for a long time? And how's that dynamic?
He has been. I mean, but he is very open as far as farming goes. He's very open to new ideas and letting us try things out here. He's been really good. I mean, he's open to the idea. He believes in soil health and everything too, so it's worked really well. Slowly making changes, you know, and adding the cattle and grazing cover crop. It's working really well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So can you describe a bit the project with Ducks Unlimited, and then like what issues were you seeing on this piece of ground, and what has the process of working with Ducks Unlimited been like?
Oh, it's been really good. I guess we started in 2020 with Ducks Unlimited. We've done a lot of fencing, and then we did a little bit of new grass planting, and then did this later, and this is a cover crop field fenced in, and really just kept adding. Been working with them for several years now, and it's fencing, basically getting all these fences put up. It's a big investment, and it helps having that cost share, and to work with Ducks Unlimited makes it a lot more possible, basically.
So you let CRP expire and put it back into working grassland and cropland too, or?
Yeah, we've done cropland too, so it's a mix of that. CRP stayed in grass, and that's permanent pasture. And then we've added some of our tougher ground fields. We've gotten fences around for cover crops and grazing. So.
I'm also curious, like from a wildlife standpoint, if you've noticed any difference with, doing plantings with Ducks Unlimited. Are there more birds around, more wildlife?
I mean, honestly, I think so. I don't know if I walk it more often or not, but you see a lot of ducks out here. There's a lot of wetlands, and there's a lot of ducks and birds. Sometimes you walk out there and there's birds right with the cows, like on their back, eating the flies and stuff. That's pretty cool to see. They seem to get really along really well with the cows and stuff, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I really think that like what's good for the meadowlark is good for a working ranch land.
For sure,
like what's good for grassland birds or waterfowl is good for working ranch land. So how do you see the role of conservation in your operation where you're at today, and how would you describe the challenges and opportunities associated with your project with Ducks Unlimited?
I'd say conservation is really important. Soil health, and taking care of the soil and making sure to build it back up, and that's really been an important part of it. And with the no-till and cover crops and adding cattle, that's a really good way to do it, and I think that's really important on this operation.
One of the things too, I guess, like, the soil health principles, we talk a lot about living roots for as long as possible. We talk a lot about soil armor, residue. We think a lot about species diversity, livestock integration. All that sounds really good when we're giving presentations about it, but what is it like actually implementing that kind of complex, holistic approach on the ground?
It's a lot. It's a lot of work, a lot to it. It's not super simple, and it's always learning. Every day you're learning how to do it better and keep improving. But it can be done. I've learned that it can be done on smaller scale. Helps first, and kind of building into it as you learn more and keep scaling up. And that's kind of what we're in the middle of here. We're still getting bigger. But,
but to me, and the learning is kind of one of the byproducts of it. It's fun to kind of learn different things about your own ground, ways that you can improve the soil, but it's also humbling, right? So have you had any like challenging issues that have come up, filtration issues or overgrazing or anything like that?
I mean, yeah, you do get from time to time filtrate. A lot of this land is a little wetter, so we do have water infiltration issues, and hopefully that's starting. I think it is starting to improve on this piece. It's noticeable. It used to be like a sloughs out there would be really full of water, and I think it's really starting to get better with cover crops and everything else. But yeah, that's always a struggle out here too, keeping that water under control. Yeah.
And I should have mentioned for the audience's sake that, like most interviews, we're doing this outside, so the wind that you're hearing today is brought to you by North Dakota. It's probably the windiest state, or one of the windiest states in the country, and that's one of the reasons that I think we talk a lot about soil health. I mean, we've had a lot of big windstorms this spring, a lot of lost topsoil. You know, my home county, Walsh County, NDSU did a study that said that we lost over 50% of our topsoil since 1960. Crazy, and it's not just quantity, it's also we're losing fertility, quality, organic matter. So although this is complicated, I mean, what's happening under the ground is also really complicated and needs to be fed. So I guess I'm curious, like, what kinds of changes have you noticed on the ground, or are you yet noticing any, like, are filtration problems being resolved quicker? Is it taking more rain?
I think it is. I think it's slowly improving that, and I think soil structure's gotten a lot better. You go out there and dig a little bit, and there's earthworms out there, and that's, I mean, you love to see that. And the soil structure just seems like it really improves when you implement no-till and cover crops. It just, you start building the soil back up. Is really what it does. The
aggregation, I mean, really healthy soil. I mean, it looks like chocolate cake. It's full of microbial life.
Yeah, you just love to see it. And holding that in your hand, you know you're on the right track when you see that.
We might sound straight, but it like smells good. There's like all kinds of things about it that are just really great. Okay, so so one of the things that we find to be most important here is not really the soil conservation district, like where I work, telling farmers or ranchers what to do. That's not an effective method, right? But it really is effective to have farmer to farmer interaction, rancher to rancher interaction. And so I guess what advice, or what would you tell somebody who's like on the fence, interested maybe in doing some of this stuff, and like what would you tell them?
I'd say, I mean, go for it. Start slow. If you, don't try to fence every acre, but start slow, and definitely it's worth every effort. It's not going to be easy right away, that's for sure. But it's definitely worth the effort in building your soil and seeing the improvements.
Well, and I guess, I won't ask you to like pull out your accounting books or anything and show us that part of it, but what can you tell us about the relationship between like profitability and these kind of methods? Because we often hear that this won't work here and you'll go broke doing it, kind of thing, right? And so I guess I'm just kind of curious, what would you have to say in response to that in terms of profitability of implementing these practices?
Well, I think the profitability is still certainly good, and it gets better over time too as you look at it. I mean, the goal would be, this can be your fertility program too, and that makes a big difference with profitability, not having that fertilizer expense. We're not there completely yet, but as you build the soil, you can start, using the cows and cover crop for fertility, and that's a big deal there, and the more resilient crops and everything like that. It's, in the end, it's more profitable. It takes time to build it, especially, you're starting from a low spot and building it up. So,
taking out those input costs or reducing them at first. You probably don't want to go cold turkey.
You can't go cold turkey.
That's bad for the soil. You have to do it gradually. Everything takes time. That's the thing too, is we're talking about soil often as like a biological process, as a chemistry process, but it's also a geological process. So those scales of time, biology, the rate at which things can decay and become part of the soil, the chemistry process, but it's also a geological slow speed transformation story, right?
Yeah.
And so what role does patience play on the farm?
That's a big role. That's something you learn farming, I think, other than, you got to be patient. You're working with weather and nature and geological, like you said. It's not on your schedule a lot of times. You just got to work towards the goal. It's a lot of one step at a time, I guess you could say.
That's great. So, I guess I'm interested to hear, like, what kind of important lessons have you learned from your farm about the ground? Like, what's the most important lesson that you've learned from your operation here? And what are you still learning today or hoping to learn today?
Yeah, I mean, you're always learning every day, it's true, but I mean, there's a certain amount of that patience when you farm. I mean, you're working with nature and the weather, and you're working with the livestock, and it's a whole level of, you got to realize you're not on your schedule and stuff. You got to work with what you got and whatever gets thrown at you, and keep building. I mean, and you realize how little you know, honestly. The more you learn, the more you see, and it's like, you don't know it all by any means. That's what you always keep learning about, what the soil health and the cattle and everything else.
Yeah.
So.
No, I often say with the crew that we work with that we have to treat the ground like it's the learning environment and like it's the teacher almost.
Yeah.
We're out here trying to pay close attention, learn from what we're noticing, and many times I think that's the same job for someone who's in farming or in ranching,
for sure, yeah.
Especially when they're implementing all these different kind of practices. There's a lot to notice, a lot to take in.
Yep.
And, how much do you think you miss when you're out here noticing?
That's the thing, yeah. You learn to be better at observing because you see more, and then it's like, how did I miss that? Yeah, that's true. There's never an end to what you can see out here. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's a great thing too. Yeah, to be able to see all that. So.
Well, those are the questions I have for you, Luke. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me here today, and I want to actually turn things over and let Robert talk with you for a little bit about the project in particular. Okay,
sounds good.
Yeah, great. I guess my question for both of you is, you guys have been working together, Ducks Unlimited and local farmer rancher, and we hear a lot about the resistance to working with agencies like organizations like Ducks Unlimited. So I'm curious to kind of get your perspective, Luke, on why you worked with Ducks Unlimited, and from your perspective, Robert, like what kinds of challenges and opportunities do you see from the Ducks Unlimited side working with local landowners?
Okay. Want me to go first then?
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's been really great working with Ducks Unlimited. I guess starting out, I knew I needed to have a lot of fences to build, but I mean, always a little bit of hesitancy at first. Cowboys love their freedom and everything like that, but you find out Ducks Unlimited is great to work with. I mean, Robert's been excellent. I mean, they work with you, they make the project. I mean, and it's really a win-win for us, I would say. Our goals aligned really well, and they're willing to, work with what you got going on out here and more. And it's just been really great, I guess. It's worked really good.
Yeah, I'll touch on that. It started with initially a cover crop project.
Yeah.
And that's a really popular program we have, and we're just trying to work with producers to facilitate another avenue to keep livestock on the landscape. There's multiple objectives you can hit with doing cropland projects. First of all would be soil health is kind of the key to that, and really you're just trying to treat that as another piece of grass or pasture. I mean, there's not bare spots on the landscape unless you put them there or there's a natural disaster. There's going to be some type of forage there whether you put it there or not, so why don't we do that deliberately? This is an animal-dominated landscape, so why don't we use the animals we have instead of, having the absence of those grasses or land would deteriorate. It needs animal impact on it, so why don't we use those animals to, like you said, a fertility program. You can put those nutrients back on the landscape rather than or using synthetic fertilizers or something like that to do that. So Luke had a need where he was interested. He had the livestock. He was starting up his program. He saw the need to kind of spearhead, shoot two birds with one stone. Basically, he had the animals, he had the cropland. Let's try to put the animals back on the cropland and improve it that way. So that's how this kind of initially started. And actually, I think you had some non-productive cropland on the edge of this over there.
Mm-hmm. We're on some of the CRP and did a grass seeding.
That's right. So we could use some of our additional funding to provide cost share for grass seeding, and then fence that out as well to provide a pasture. And this is actually quite unique because usually it's one project, maybe two that we do with a producer, but actually you had some more pieces where you had that expired CRP land.
Yep.
So we were able to use a different funding source. This is now 3 different funding sources that we used for Luke in 1 year to fence out those and provide another pastures. And actually it's a 3 to 4 cell system now with the cropland. And you guys were speaking earlier, but ultimately what we're trying to do here is build options or resiliency for Luke here. Because, you know, like if a human being or a population of whatever animal, they don't have any, let's say, heterozygous, you know, resistance to, let's say, a disease, one thing can come in and wipe them out. Rather, in how they relate that to this, if you're doing the same thing and you don't have any options, if you have a bad winter or a drought situation, you're going to lose. You know, that could be a very unproductive year. Rather, if you have different pastures to go to, you have, let's say, rye planted in the fall, and then spring that grows up. That gives you another option to go somewhere to kind of compensate. So in North Dakota, we were just talking about this earlier, but usually it's too wet or it's too dry, Luke. There's no, hey, this is a nice year. So the variance on that can be drastic, you know, from severe drought a couple years ago to now we're getting pretty wet. There's been pretty wet years, but, you know, producers have limited options when you're in the extreme drought or extreme wet, which it seems like it's ping-ponging back year and forth. But now you have options. You have, you know, rye sucking away moisture in the spring, so you have an option there. You have some grassland that maybe you didn't touch last year because you have a nice rotation. So your variance on things you can do is much tighter, and you're not susceptible to those extreme drought events or extreme wet events. So that's kind of the history, what we've kind of been doing. And then you asked how Ducks Unlimited kind of, the landowner perception of Ducks Unlimited in North Dakota, and I would agree to you what you said. There historically has been some animosity there, but not just in terms of Ducks Unlimited. That's been in most wildlife agencies, so we're kind of lumped in the same wildlife bucket. Game and Fish, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and particularly in the Northeast where I work, and this is the start of that, towards up to Devil's Lake. A lot of that's been towards easements, but historically we didn't have this conservation program arm with Ducks Unlimited. It was in North Dakota, or in the United States, Ducks Unlimited didn't do their first project until 1984, I believe, in Lake Arena. But that was an engineering project, and that's how kind of we had a large engineering program back then. You know, that was creating nesting islands of all things. A lot of big, expensive projects, you know, water control structures. And throughout the years, we've kind of transitioned to more this working lands programs. In North Dakota, greater than 90% of the land's privately held. And, you know, places like yours, Luke, and that's where we need to have these partnerships with private landowners to kind of facilitate their needs as well as ours, as long as we have a clear and objective, and your objectives meet ours, this is a perfect example. We're going to the same direction, soil health, grassland systems and wetland systems. But so now we focused on doing many of these smaller working lands programs that are not perpetual, 5 to 10 years, where, you know, cows need grass and water, ducks need grass and water. It's pretty simple. As long as we can have a temporary, let's keep some grass for some short term, and then keep the wetlands intact. That seems to work out quite well. Why is livestock important for Ducks Unlimited? Because what's good for the bird is good for the herd. What's good for cow is good for the duck. Ducks need grass and they need water, primarily wetlands, and then the grass for nesting. Most of the duck species. And cows obviously need grass for forage, and then they need water. And they often utilize wetlands for that as well. So without cows on the landscape here, I just have a tendency to think that we wouldn't have the necessity to keep all this grass around. So we have the potential to lose that to row crop farming or whatever. So it's vital for Ducks Unlimited to keep cattle on the landscape.
Yeah. And yeah, I think having ducks and birds out there is great. They probably eat a lot of the bugs and stuff that might, it's like a whole cycle in the system. And it just, when you have it just seems like when the ducks are doing good, so are the cows, kind of like what Robert said, everything's working good out there. It's all one system and it works.
Thank you for listening to Common Ground, a Prairie Podcast. We would like to thank our guests, Jake Callander, Luke Rotunda, and Robert Ford, for taking the time to speak with us. Special thanks to Crista Fiala for producing today's episode, and to Matthew Connolly for our theme music. We are indebted to the North Dakota Natural Resources Trust for the generous grant that has allowed us to travel across the state to visit with a range of soil health experts, conservationists, wildlife enthusiasts, and working farmers and ranchers. Until next time, this is Josh Anderson signing off for Common Ground, a Prairie Podcast. Common Ground, a Prairie Podcast, is supported by a generous grant from the North Dakota Natural Resources Trust. If you would like to contribute to our on-the-ground conservation initiatives and our conservation internship and mentorship programs here in North Dakota, please consider making a donation to us through our member support link on our Spotify page. Your contributions will directly support the Walsh County Three Rivers Soil Conservation District, where this year we will plant over 10,000 trees and several hundred acres of conservation grass, pollinators, and cover crops, while also offering hands-on conservation job training to our high school and college interns. You can also support our efforts by liking, reviewing, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Thank you.